right, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. We'll ask folks to take a seat. We're going to get started, start the evening tonight off here. So thankful that I showed up tonight. Thank you for being here. We know that there's a lot of time, effort, and energy that goes into a night like this, arranging babysitters and getting caretakers and feeding people dinner and running out the door and all those fun things. So thank you so much for being with us. We're super grateful that you decided to be out here tonight. I'll introduce myself here in a second. Just want to kind of go through the agenda for the evening tonight, just so people feel comfortable with it. We're going to do just some welcomings and some introductions and thank yous and all those fun things here in a second. Just one piece, if you'd be kind enough, just to ask you to have electronic respect for everybody tonight, meaning that if you have to take a call, it's incredible. I've done plenty of this work, and there's still adults who just stand up in the middle of the room and are like, hello? Like there's nothing going on. So if you'd be kind enough, if you do, we get it, life is busy, but if you need to take a phone call or anything else that's going to be really distracting to our speakers and to our guests tonight, if you could take it in the lobby or outside, that would be greatly appreciated. The index cards that are on the chairs near you, we're going to ask you to, if you'd be kind enough, if anything sort of strikes your fancy as Steve and Jen are presenting about our general overall topic tonight, if you'd be kind enough to write down maybe one particular question that comes to mind, and as we're transitioning from our presenters to our panel, we'll ask that, we'll kind of pass those to the end of the aisle, we'll collect them, and we'll facilitate those as we get ready for our panel to talk. So is anything that comes up that you want to write down that you think something that can help you out would be amazing. We're going to have a presentation by Steve Howley and Jen Lopes tonight. That's going to be kind of the next piece we get to. We have a panel of four awesome experts that are going to be with us to answer your questions and some other ones that we have going along. And then we have follow-up resources. They've been moved into the lobby, from the lobby, and they're in the room here tonight. So we'll introduce our resources at the very end of the program. So that's sort of the lay of the land for the next hour and a half or so. And why did we choose the particular time frame? A lot of us have been to any program sometimes, but we try to limit the time to a certain extent because we don't want to reach a point of diminished returns where we lose people. So the resources in the room and our panelists will all be here for you at the end to sort of talk offline as we look at it and process things as we go forward. So how did we get to where we are here tonight? So like I said, my name's Steve McGuire. This is my 20th year teaching. I teach here in the Scituate Public Schools. I'm up at the high school. I teach science electives. I've been here in Scituate for 15 years. But in 20 years of teaching in a public classroom, by far and away, there's been two major things that have changed. Number one is obviously technology. Like it's a no-brainer. I think you'd ask any professional that's been in education over that time that's one. But a very close two, or number 1A, would be the level of anxiety and depression that our kids are dealing with, and that's changed over the course of time, and it's clear. So that was a part of the genesis of putting together tonight. So last February vacation, I was sitting watching Diane Sawyer interview Dylan Klebo's mother on ABC, and if I could recommend, it's a little heavy, but it's a tremendous program for you to watch. And it was so good I had to stop, rewind, got a notepad out, and started taking notes about all the details and information that was in it. And from that sort of conversation, I called a couple people, and I'll introduce those folks in a second. And from that sort of whole piece spurned tonight's program. So that's sort of the genesis for this and why we're here. The other thing to keep in, I don't know about you, but I have one person I call when I get fired up about something like that, and that's Anne Marie. And if you don't know Anne Marie, you'll know why. You know why I called Anne Marie if you do know her. So I said, she's like, it's February vacation and it's 9:30. I said, I don't care. Every parent should see this show, or we should come up with something where we can help. So the following folks have been instrumental in putting a night like this together. This doesn't just happen. So obviously Anne Marie, Laura, who's the manager of social services for the town of Scituate, Greg, who's the director of health and wellness for SPS, Steve, who's a school psychologist, and Jen, who's our school adjustment counselor at SHS. So all these folks have been just instrumental in putting tonight together. So can you give them a nice round of applause, please? Would be great. So the big piece for us, we wanted to, as we got the night started, we thought it was really important to just do a general overview of the topic so people are comfortable. Again, if you wanted, it would be a great opportunity to write your question down as we go forward. And let me just sort of explain why we're doing the written down portion of it is we want to have some anonymity there, and B, we want to be respectful to the panel's time because, again, just kind of process. We'll take some individual questions or, can you expound on that a little bit more or whatever, but we would prefer to kind of read off the index cards. And then if you have a specific piece that is for you that would help your situation and may not benefit the whole group, that would be an opportunity to go up and talk to those folks. Before I turn it over to Steve and Jen, I think it's really important that you recognize that A, this is not happening everywhere else, meaning nights like tonight don't happen in a lot of places. B, the resources in the room tonight are unbelievable. So you're not alone in this, in the mental health piece. You have plenty of people that are here to help. From a school district perspective, you have a tremendous amount of professionals that will do everything they can in their power to help you, as well as a group of folks that will be around here tonight. So please keep that in perspective as we go forward. So I'm now going to turn it over. Could you please welcome Jen and Steve? There you go.
Thank you. So my name is Jen Lopes. I'm the adjustment counselor at Scituate High School. I've been there probably 6 years. Prior to that, I was in the private mental health field, so I had returned to the education field. Are we passing this back and forth?
Can you guys hear me if we don't use this? We need it?
Yeah. All right, good. So sorry, go ahead. Does it matter in terms of the recording or no?
No? Okay. I'm Steve Howley. I've been in the Scituate public school system for about 10 years now. Have worked in a variety of mental health clinics, evaluation centers, even the finance world, if that even matters anything. Jen and I have worked together for several years, and we're happy to participate and help get some feedback.
And I think this slide speaks to what Steve McGuire was just saying in terms of the increase that we're seeing in both numbers and acuity of kids who are struggling with depression and anxiety. This is the cover of Time magazine that was in October. So it's not just a Scituate problem or a Scituate challenge. It's obviously nationwide. So we just wanted to start kind of with some comments that we hear, certainly, and you may or may not hear. And it speaks a little bit to some of the stigma that might be out there, some of the things that may make it hard to come to a presentation like this, because there are some attitudes out there from people who really don't understand it. And this is part of why we're having this type of forum, is to try to educate people and give people the opportunity to talk about it. So we hear a lot with the teenagers, because both of us are at the teenager level, although you will also hear from panelists who are kind of at the younger level. So we're going to cover all ages tonight. But we hear a lot, they're just being teenagers, they're just doing it for attention. And the reality is, they may be doing it for attention, but what's that attention about? Obviously they need something. They're having some sort of struggle, and they're trying to get our attention, whether it's through a friend or through an adult or whatever. They should just suck it up. Kids say that to each other fairly regularly. Obviously, it's not that simple. If it were that simple, kids would do it. And this, I have to say, I hear kids say a lot, especially in Scituate. Their life is so good, what do they have to be depressed about? I hear the kids themselves say that. Like, I know I have a great family, I have a ton of support, money's not a problem for my family, and certainly there are kids for whom that's not the case, but there are plenty of kids for whom that is the case, and they say, I know all that, but I still feel depressed and I can't help it. So those are, some of the things that we hear. Obviously, if you're here, one of the biggest messages we would like you to take away is that, it's not a sign of weakness. You're not doing anything wrong. The kid's not doing anything wrong. If they could do better, they would do better. It's not a matter of can't. It's not a matter of won't. It's a matter of can't. It's not a matter of just get over it.
So as we talk about mental health issues, mental illness, we want to kind of frame it for you guys. Jen and I are going to talk mainly about anxiety and depression tonight. When you work in a clinical setting, especially in an evaluation center, there's sort of 3 gateway diagnoses that come across: anxiety, depression, or ADHD. Pretty much when you're reevaluating someone that's continuing to have struggles, they probably have one of those first primary diagnosis. So we're going to stick to the depression anxiety, but know that this concept kind of bridges all of mental health. So depending on your background, your experience, exposure to pop culture, you might have views of what mental health is. And it really is more of the triangle. And so we look at it from the biological perspective. That's the brain development. That's where the medication comes in. That's the neurons firing. That's everything that's hardwired within us. There's the social piece. Those are your risk factors. Those are, do you have family that has mental health issues? Do you have risk factors such as low SES? Do you have ongoing exposure to stress?
Can you define SES?
Oh, sorry. So, economic status. We apologize. And then the psychological factors are your ability to manage things. One of the major pieces of focus right now in our country is resiliency. And are we teaching resiliency skills, coping skills, self-management, time management, planning? So those are the psychological factors. The more risk that you have within each of those, the more likely you may or may not have mental health issues. But it also, from my perspective, from a preventative measure, is also where we need to be treating. You know, we can't just medicate someone. We can't just say go to a therapist and develop coping skills, because if they're still within that stress all the time, or if they're still exposed to family challenges, it may not be just about your deep breathing and your counting. So just, and again, this is very simplistic overviews, you know, just to sort of set the table and drive the conversation. One of the key diagnoses that students, young adults, teenagers, even as you'll see in this slide in a minute, elementary school students these days are dealing with is anxiety. There's two levels of anxiety. There's situational anxiety. I have to try out for the baseball team and there's only one slot left. And I'm just having panic attacks at night because I'm falling asleep thinking about my swing. And am I going to make the team? That's situational. Then there's more pervasive anxiety. And pervasive anxiety is a thought pattern that impacts how we behave and we don't have control over it. It's constant worrying, it's constant fears, it's constant feeling you're being judged, and it actually impacts how you perceive your day. And many clinicians, teachers, parents will tell you perception is reality. And that's where the mental illness comes in, because you have these perceptions of worry and fear that you're not good enough, you can't do it, and you might even know they're irrational. That doesn't make sense. I might think I'm going to pass out right now. I'm not going to pass out. My blood sugar's fine. But if I think that, I might start stuttering and not do it, and you guys all look at me like, you're fine, what are you doing? So it really is that irrational thought process behind it. Physically, what would parents see? Panic attacks, nightmares, sweaty, a lot of fidgety. You know, that's where that ADHD comes in. It's that inability to pay attention and remember, to focus. But it's not ADHD, it's anxiety. Or it could be both. But those are some of the physical things you might see.
Can I add to the whole panic attack thing? You know, we throw that phrase around like it's nothing. Like, oh, the kids say it, oh, I just had a panic attack or whatever, you know? And if you have ever either yourself experienced a panic attack or been around somebody who's experienced a panic attack, you would think they're having a heart attack.
Yeah,
and there have been kids with whom we've called 911 because they're, you know, it's been that significant. So I think, you know, all that physical stuff is very, very real, and let's face it, nobody copes well. Like, you may have all the strategies in the world, but if you think you're having a heart attack, you're not going to, you know, stop and color. That's not going to cut it for you in that moment. So,
you can't breathe, you can't color.
Exactly, right.
So, just to sort of, in 20 seconds, outline what anxiety might look like. Pretend you're waiting for a phone call from your significant other or your child and you didn't have your cell phone with you right now. How much would you be paying attention to me? How much would you be focused 100% on this presentation versus, I don't know where my cell phone is. I left my license at home. I left the ATM card in the machine. And that's a real stress that would be in the moment. It's going to impact how you present here. This presentation has nothing to do with your ATM card or your cell phone. But if you didn't have it, that stress would impact your presentation right now. And so for individuals with anxiety, that's ongoing and pervasive throughout their day. So just to give you sort of that context to think about it. Because I know if I showed up, if I drove all the way here without my cell phone, I'd definitely be thinking about it. So some thoughts that an individual dealing with anxiety, especially children and adolescents, have going through their head at any given moment. I know what to do, but I won't succeed. I have the checklist. Mom, I know what my homework is, but I can't do it. a feeling of I just don't know. I don't know what to do. Keep telling me, kid, I don't know. Is it right? Am I wrong? What did I miss? Just these constant fears going through the head that, again, more likely than not, are based in irrational or based in environmental stress that's out of someone's control.
Can I also jump in again?
Yep.
So when you're talking about anxiety at that younger level, you might see the separation anxiety, you might see a little bit of school avoidance, you might, and then that kind of morphs over time. At the high school, junior high and high school, you know, every kid is worried about looking and feeling different, right? There isn't a teenager out there who wants to stand out. But if you've got a kid with significant social anxiety or true social anxiety, that is to the nth degree. So any sort of like teacher calling on you is like a fate worse than death because you're unprepared or whatever. So again, every kid's nervous when a teacher calls on them if they're not sure they know the answer. But this is to the extreme, and that can shut this kid down, and that can be like, I am not going back to school. So helping them to A, be able to identify that, and then B, come up with strategies to manage that.
And the tough part might be the teacher didn't call on them, but they think the teacher was planning on calling on them, so then I still am anxious about it.
Right.
And nobody did anything wrong, but that anxiety is still there.
So we're going to flip to depression a little bit, and I guess, you know, when we're talking about anxiety and depression, obviously everybody feels sad. Everybody feels anxious. I mean, we all have, you know, human emotion, and we all experience that. And let's face it, if we didn't feel a little bit of anxiety, nothing would get done sometimes, right? I mean, it kind of gets us jump-started. Same thing with depression. Not everybody feels depression necessarily, but everybody feels sadness. So when we're looking at, you know, what's typical, what's an expected amount of sadness, and what is kind of above and beyond that. So in terms of depression, it's kind of an intense feeling with the underline on intense of sadness, hopelessness, frustration, more than just being sad. You know, we expect if you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend that you're going to be sad. If it lasts for several weeks, if you're noticing that you're not motivated, you're not eating, you know, you're not enjoying your life, that's when it starts to cross the line. And we're going to talk more about kind of the duration and, on the next ones. Can you flip it?
Yep.
So with a lot of the kids we see, certainly at the high school level, the negative thoughts like, everybody hates me, that teacher doesn't like me, that teacher thinks I'm stupid, my friends think I'm stupid, nobody loves me, I'm not good enough, all that kind of thing. And the description of, I'm empty, I'm hollow, it could be, I have this fabulous family, and I would never do anything to hurt myself because I know they love me, but it just doesn't really matter. It doesn't really care. You know, I don't really care. Which is a really hard thing, obviously, as a parent, to kind of help them through that. So this is like the clinical diagnosis for depression. Depressed or irritable mood. Again, what teenager isn't depressed and irritable at times? But you're looking at a decreased interest and pleasure. Maybe they used to go to, you know, sports or drama or whatever, and you notice that there's a, you know, kind of a withdrawal from some of those things. You might see an increase in eating or a decrease in eating, called vegetative signs of depression. Same with sleeping. They might sleep a lot. A lot of times we hear sleeping too much with the depression, but obviously there are kids who also sleep too little. And at the teenage level, you do see the irritability sometimes in place of the sadness and depression.
Especially more often in males too.
Yeah.
The irritability and the rudeness and some of the social issues around that tend to be more pervasive.
Right. So I think we kind of covered that. I think the way it plays out in school is you might have difficulty concentrating. I have kids all day long who couldn't get their homework done, like Steve said. They know, you know, they academically may be okay, but they're really struggling with actually getting the work done. So all those kinds of things are certainly symptoms of depression, and the recurrent thoughts of death obviously is suicidal thoughts or behavior. The other thing that we see at the adolescent and even late elementary and middle school is non-suicidal self-injury, which we could spend an entire, you know, evening talking about what that is. That's some of the cutting or the self-injurious behaviors that aren't necessarily suicidal in nature, but they become a way to cope. They become a habit. They become, you know, there's all these reasons why kids do that. And we certainly could, you know, do another presentation on that down the road, because that's another thing that has definitely increased in the time I've been doing, in the 25 years I've been doing this work. You know, I remember one kid doing that one in 1990 whatever, and now it's, you know, it's pretty prevalent. So similarities between anxiety and depression, the physical stuff, the somatic, you know, I'm tired, my stomach hurts, the anxiety, you could also get that with depression, but the anxiety, you see more of the amped up kind of physical symptoms. And each one of them could be mild, moderate, or severe, both anxiety and depression. But they both impact thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And you could have anxiety without depression. Oftentimes you have them both together, though. And you may have either one of those with other diagnoses. Again, we picked these two because it's the most common, but there are many, many others, many other mood disorders, psychotic disorders, there are a lot of them, but these are the most common. And both are treatable, so if you get with the right therapist, sometimes medication helps, sometimes it doesn't, but there are strategies out there and systems out there, including all these resources here, that can help kids and families through that.
So one thing that I find is very important to hit on is just to emphasize the differences between a clinical diagnosis and like situational anxiety and depression. Just because I feel like as a society we become more aware of these concerns, we've also tended to overemphasize them a little bit. So it's very important to distinguish the two, but also from a preventative matter. Think about it from, if we're starting to see signs of a kid saying, I'm anxious, I'm depressed. If they're starting to express that, they may not be clinically depressed. That doesn't mean we don't pay attention to it, If I sprain my ankle, I can go back on the basketball court. God bless me, because I'm probably just going to injure it worse. Or I could treat the mild sprain and be back on the court the next day as opposed to missing 6 months. Mental health is the same way. So there is a significant difference based on the intensity and the duration. Clinical depression is over 2 weeks or more, multi-symptoms. We don't need to wait that long, though, in order to start seeking treatment. So I think it's important to understand the difference, but also to recognize the sooner the better. And so when we talk about other symptoms, other mental health issues, this is the median age of onset for clinical diagnosis that we're starting to see. And you'll see that it actually builds. And so when we use the word comorbid, we mean symptoms that go together. So you can have ADHD comorbid with depression. So there are different levels of concerning mental health issues. The most concerning is being a psychotic disorder, a thought disorder. Early on, we're seeing more of the anxiety and the behavior disorders. Then we're seeing mood disorders, which is the inability to regulate your emotions. Then we're seeing an increase in substance abuse disorders. It's not a coincidence that we're seeing a building upon from lighter, more treatable symptoms to heavier, more concerning.
And the earlier the diagnosis of some of those things, the more likely it is to become a chronic problem, right? So the earlier we can identify that, and the earlier we get the support in there, the better outcome, the better long-term outcome there would be.
So Scituate. So for those who don't know, the Scituate Public Schools has done a lot of work over the last several years, starting with the health department and bridging to a couple of grant-funded resources that we've had. So we wanted to give you a snapshot, and not because as alarmists. This is more a snapshot of what our students are expressing at many different ages. Most of this data is consistent with the state of Massachusetts. So it's not like, oh, Scituate's this red dot on the map. But as even just in passing, Greg and I were talking earlier today, we have seen steady increases in many areas. And part of it is students are becoming more aware and talking about it, but this is what they're sharing with us. And again, 23% of students are feeling sad or hopeless for 2 or more weeks in a row. There's that 2 or more weeks, that's diagnostic. So there's some concern there. Then we go to a higher level of concern. 16% of students have reported considering suicide. Not uncommon for adolescents. Don't want to alarm anyone. That is a common number. It's part of the developmental curve, actually. But it's what our students are saying. It's what they're thinking about. And it has been trending upwards for a couple of years. The health department has been tracking some of this data for several years. A little bit more data our students provided us with last year. You can see, and here you can see sort of the trend in concerns. Large percentage of our students are reporting that they worry a lot. And we know that students are under more stress these days. They are going to worry more. But if they can't manage that, we're having an increase in students that are having many fears, are easily stressed, are easily concerned. That's becoming more atypical. It's worrying, okay, but now I have all these fears. Where's that coming from? And then we have, 10% of our students are reporting they'd rather be alone than with other people. That's a significant area of concern. If you would rather isolate yourself than be with other people, that's a really high level of symptomology. And again, you can see that sort of trend with light symptoms down to heavier symptoms, and our students are experiencing that.
So what can we do? Why are we here? I think the beauty of living in this community and having the district support is amazing. The fact that Scituate has a social emotional goal is pretty much unheard of. There are very few districts across the state, and I don't know, nationwide, who have written that into their kind of educational plan. So the fact that we have committed to that as a district is huge. And have health classes and other ways that we can do that. But what can we do kind of above and beyond that? As Steve said, we're not, part of that educational district plan is to try to help teach some of these skills so that kids from little, kindergarten, can start to identify and articulate what they're feeling, and then to be able to manage that. Teaching them how to not get stuck in that negative thinking, the social skills, how to reach out. And let's face it, these kids, probably part of the rise in some of this stuff is the social media stuff. It used to be that when we were having trouble with our friend at school, we'd go home and may or may not tell our parents about it, but we'd get a break from it overnight, and then we'd come back the next day. Well, now these kids, they are literally measuring in likes and Snapchat streaks, how popular they are, and they don't get a break from this.
They're attached to their friends 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I don't have any friends I want to be attached to. These kids are growing up in that.
Right. So teaching them some skills, and maybe even taking a break from that kind of stuff, trying to teach the flexible thinking skills. I think as adults, we can model kind of healthy coping skills. How are we taking care of ourselves? What are we doing? Both in our communications with our children and the example we're setting for our kids. For these kids with anxiety and depression, transitions can be really tricky, right? The unstructured time. So whether it's, they're done eating their breakfast and you're thinking about getting them to school, how do you build some structure into that time? Or whether it's a kid who's sitting in class hasn't started yet, and there's all this kind of free-for-all time, teachers kind of building in some structure and helping the kids have a little more predictability that way. And have a plan in place. And then continue to talk about this. I think, as parents, I give you all credit for being here, first of all. And I think I talk to parents all the time about how you have to parent. And it can be hard to parent these kids, right? So if you've got a kid who's struggling with anxiety, depression, and you feel like you're going to push this kid over the edge, if you say, you have to do this, or I need you to do this, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this kid could become suicidal. Or, I want this kid, I need them to spend some time by themselves, but I'm terrified to allow that to happen, that I'm worried about all those things. Or, I don't know when to push my kid to get them to school because they're really trying to avoid. So you guys are in these sticky situations all the time, and how do you get the support you need so that you can get them the help that they need? Because sometimes it's hard. It's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in the thick of that.
And the help might not be the same for everyone. You could have Johnny and Joey who both have anxiety that present the same, but without that antibiotic to treat it, what Johnny responds to is going to be different than what Joey responds to. So unless we're talking about it and planning as a community, as groups, it's going to be very difficult to move forward with it.
So the resources in the room are fabulous. We have some stuff at the back table that have some books, both for parents. There's some books that are there that are not all included on the resource list, but there is a resource list as well. But you're welcome to look through the books. And then there's a list of Scituate Public Schools contact people. Who the adjustment counselor is at the various schools, school psychologists, that kind of thing, as a way to reach out to people. And then this was just the information that we kind of pulled from in terms of providing data for this, in addition to the youth risk behavior survey that we said.
Awesome.